In World of Warplanes, the Bf-110B is the first of four Zerstörer-type, twin-engined heavy fighter aircraft available for players that progress down the German tech tree. Starting at Tier 4 is the Messerschmitt Bf-110B, at Tier 5 in the tech tree is the Messerschmitt Bf-110E, also at Tier 5 is the premium Me-210, and at Tier 6 is the tech tree Me-410. These four aircraft comprise the main Zerstörer type aircraft in the German tech tree, as they were historically of that branch. In this video, I'm going to cover the first of those four aircraft, the Tier 4 Bf-110B, which is the first of the aircraft that you'll find in the German tech tree, having come along through the Focke-Wulf 57. So how do I feel about this aircraft? Honestly, it's fun. It's not the most effective aircraft that I've played, and it's not the most effective heavy fighter of its matchmaking spread. Indeed, this thing can be pushed up into Tier 5 matches, where not only can it run into its upgraded counterpart in the 110E, but it can also encounter the 210, it can encounter the Bristol Beaufighter from the British, and it can also encounter the P-38 Lightnings from the Americans. So, as a result, this and the other Tier 4 heavy fighter, the Bristol Blenheim in the United Kingdom tech tree, is probably some of the worst heavy fighters experience to have. At Tier 3, the Germans have the monopoly on heavy fighters with the Focke-Wulf 57, and the same is true at Tier 2. And the Focke-Wulf 57 happens to be a particularly powerful aircraft at its tier, given that it has no real competition to worry about. Its armament is quite devastating, especially for a Tier 3 aircraft, and moving from Tier 3 to Tier 4 can feel like you've got a downgrade of an aircraft, as the Bf-110B can feel far less competitive in its environment compared to the Focke-Wulf 57. However, it's not a terrible aircraft, by any stretch of the imagination. Its firepower, especially in the nose-mounted weaponry of four 7.90mm machine guns and two 20mm cannons, is pretty substantial. It can also carry two 250kg bombs, which allows it to take out quite well-armoured ground targets, and it has some defensive armament in the form of a single 7.92mm machine gun mounted at the rear of the cockpit, although this is somewhat hampered by rather limited firing arcs, as it can't really defend itself from below or from any great degree of angle to either side of the aircraft. Also, with it being a twin-engine fighter, as you can imagine, it's not that manoeuvrable, so it isn't really capable of getting itself out of a difficult situation if it's in one. Of course, historically, the Bf-110B was such a terrible fighter in dogfighting situations that although it was used as an escort for HE-111s into their forays over England, the 110s themselves also needed to be provided an escort from the Messerschmitt 109s, as the 110s were vulnerable to attack from Spitfires and Hurricanes, just as the HE-111s found themselves to be as well. In the game, however, it is certainly fun, and it can be one of the better early forays into heavy fighter experience that a player can have in this game. Certainly one to get out of reasonably quickly, as there are better options available further down the tiers, not only from Germany, but also from the other nations that have heavy fighters. However, fun because it's low tier, quick to get out of because it is low tier, and overall, quite a nice aircraft. But I think it's just let down by the fact that you've come from Focke-Wulf 57, which is a very good aircraft at its tier, and then also, following on from this, the Tier 5 heavy fighters can be quite punishing to encounter in a Tier 4, especially the P-38 Lightning, with the Lightning's overall dominance at altitude performance. And also, with the recent addition of the Japanese heavy fighters, you can run into some quite difficult situations where you can't claim altitude superiority because the Lightning exists, and you can't really manoeuvre with any heavy fighters because the Ki-45 might turn up and absolutely ruin your day on that part. Anyway, enough about talking of the stats. How do I fly the aircraft? Well, as to be expected, I fly a lot like a boom and zoomer. It's rare that I'll get into sustained turn fights unless it's the only option that I have, or if it's so I can finish off a quick kill. Generally, this thing is best flown in straight lines, either climbing to altitude, diving on something, or just at level flight at an appropriate altitude for whichever engagement you happen to be heading into. You can choose to equip bombs on it if you wish, and I do so for the occasions where I get to destroy ground targets and help with capturing objectives, beyond shooting down fighters in the designated control zones over each objective that you'll see on the minimap and on the maps themselves. However, beyond that, it feels like a pretty relegated support aircraft. It's rather difficult to carry a game by yourself in this thing, which is not an issue that you'll have too much in the Bf-110E, but you do feel like you have to rely on other people to either clear your tail or rely on other people to have someone on them who is tunnel vision to some extent, to the fact that you can get behind the tail of an opponent and shoot them down before they take evasive action or realise how much of a threat this much firepower in the nose of the 110B can actually be to their aircraft. If people are paying attention and they realise that you're tailing them, usually they will immediately start turning and move out the way, and there's very little you can do about that in a 110 other than continue the pass through and hope that you can turn back round and get on them at a later point, as engaging in continuous turning dogfights with anything, even other 110s, can be potentially dangerous for you and can cause you to lose your aircraft pretty quickly. Is it an aircraft I recommend people go down? Yes. Even if only to get out of it and to get into the 110E and the ME410 and the later German heavy fighters, certainly worth the grind. Is it an aircraft that I would say people should keep and get the specialisation on and fully upgrade? Possibly not. That might be more worthwhile for the 110E or for the 410, but on this aircraft I think it would just be a case for most people you'd be better off getting into it, grinding through all the modules and then getting into the next aircraft as soon as possible. Anyway guys, that's enough for me talking about BF-110B. I hope you enjoyed the footage I've got lined up for you, and yeah, we'll catch you in the next one.
Be advised, a line of thunderstorms is approaching. We'll soon be unable to provide support. Do you copy? Over. Keep it up. Victory is almost ours. That's it. There's no way to break through for you now. You're on your own. I'm proud of you, pilots. Head back home. Let's go. not be available. There's a heavy storm here. Unable to proceed. Return into base. Do you copy? They've almost got us. Stay alert, pilots. Large enemy force spotted over the airfield. The enemy is almost defeated. Make a final push. Attention all aircraft. Fall back and regroup.